I want to bring in a new guest to ETF Edge. Kyla Scanlon is the founder of financial education company Bread. We met while I was promoting my book on Josh Brown's podcast several months ago. I was impressed with what I heard, and we've invited her on the show. Kyla, welcome to ETF Edge.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming. Tell us about Bread.
So Bread is sort of an idea still. It's this idea that we have to sort of gamify financial education specifically. And so you can see what I'm doing with my TikToks and my newsletter. It's all about how do we get people involved in the economy at large, and that's what Bread is around. Yeah.
You mentioned TikTok, and you don't know this, but she's a bit of a social media phenomenon on YouTube, on TikTok, on Twitter. You got a podcast.
I do.
Let's Appreciate, I think it's called.
Yeah,
Is that
exactly.
right? You've got a newsletter.
I do have a newsletter.
She's an economy by herself. So tell me how you're doing this. I mean, I've been doing financial literacy for more than 30 years at CNBC, but it's hard. How do you communicate ideas about financial literacy and financial education in social media these days?
So I think there's two threads to it. You have to make it fun, and so I do different skits where I'll pretend to be Jerome Powell, pretend to be different stocks, and that really gets people involved because they're like, oh, that's funny, I can look at that and laugh. And then I think the other part is incorporating philosophy, incorporating different poems, and that really humanizes finance and brings people in a way that they normally wouldn't expect.
Yeah, there's all sorts of interesting topics you've tackled. Are we manifesting a recession? Using Home Depot as an economic indicator. What's going on in crypto? All sorts of interesting. But one of the things you do is she creates these daily short-form videos to explain the economy. I'm always amazed. Like you can point things, at yourself and do 30 seconds on the economy. Tell us about how you do that. Is that the way to get across to younger people? Is that how they're communicating? I mean, tell us about your business.
I think that there's a couple ways to think about it, right? Like TikTok, you do it every day because people are going to watch it pretty much every day. And the more iterations that you have, the more likely that you are going to hit people. And then I have such a breadth of content because I want people who learn different ways to have access to whatever they need. So if they want to watch a video, they have that. If they like reading, they have that. If they like listening to podcasts, they have that. So it's just like how many iterations can you have with people and how can you make it as fun as possible?
It's exhausting being an industry to yourself, isn't it? I mean, it's difficult. People talk to me all the time about, oh, I don't want to be a journalist anymore. I just want to, point a phone at myself and become a TikTok star. But it isn't that simple, is it? I mean, if you didn't have something important to say, you wouldn't become an influencer, which is a word I don't like anymore. Can we get is there a better word for influencer that we can start using?
I say educator for myself, or creator is nice too. I think influencer is valuable. I just don't think when you think about finance and the economy, you're not necessarily influencing people, you're educating them, you're helping them along a journey that they're going down alone.
Right.
You're just alongside them.
Right.
I think influencing is a hierarchy.
But getting back to my point, it's a lot harder as a financial literacy. Maybe you're not doing fashion, but it's a lot harder to do that and be successful. And I guess the question is, it's not just you pointing, your phone at yourself and talking. What is it to keep people engaged? How do you get at that?
Well, I think there's like two threads again. Like I think one aspect is always iterating on the style of content. So I recently started doing whiteboard series where I'll draw it, right? And before that, I was doing talking head series where I would just talk into the camera. Before that, I was doing a lot of skip-based stuff where I'd pretend to be different things. But I think it's just like trying different things and seeing what resonates with people and just being creative in that journey. Because finance is so fun. You can be so creative with it. We just don't always do that. Yeah.
Todd, how about you? How about your TikTok, 30-second videos?
I wish I had as much of a following as Kyla, but I will say she mentioned the word humanize finance, and I think that translates to ETFs in a way. ETFs have democratized, humanized investing. It's allowed access at a low-cost fee for everyone around the globe to get involved. And so what I think she's doing is tremendous for the average person.
Those of you who want to know numbers, 156,000 followers on Twitter, that's pretty good for finance. I've been on Twitter for 15 years. I probably have 120,000. You have more than I do. Not that annoys me at all. I don't know. That's why I'm wondering how did you do that. But it impresses me a lot that you're trying to figure that out. So what's important to your community these days in the financial area? What gets them going?
I mean, I think it's a lot about the Federal Reserve. Like, what is the Federal Reserve doing? How does that impact them? What does the labor market look like? You know, I have a lot of young people like myself that follow me, and they're like, well, I have a job. Like, what's going on with the labor market? And so I think it's those sorts of things, the everyday experiences that sort of feel pie in the sky. Like, when we talk about the Federal Reserve, it's oftentimes very abstract. It's like they're raising interest rates, but what does that really mean? So I think people want to know how things impact them directly. Yeah.
So what are they worried about right now? They're worried about a job, right? Are they going to have a job? Are they optimistic about the future? This is the one thing that really gets me depressed. You know, I hear that younger people aren't optimistic about the future. I mean, no matter, we weren't unhappy in the 70s with things that the United States was doing, but we were optimistic. We never thought like, oh, we're all going to, you know, eventually go to hell in a handbasket. No, I never felt that way, ever. And yet I worry sometimes I hear that. But is that a real concern?
I mean, so I've actually written about that before, like doomerism. I feel like that is a really enticing philosophy for people to subscribe to because it sort of removes agency from your life. You're like, oh, everything is just bad and I'm existing within that. So I do see a lot of young people applying that, but then I also think there's a lot of hope in the younger generation too. I think people are really excited for what could happen. It's you know, you're just sowing the seeds that just need to be watered a little right now.
There's a belief system that it is a buy-in. You have to believe that the future is going to be better. In our case, we cover finance, so I always say you have to believe capitalism is the best, for all its problems, it's the best system that we have for dealing with things. You have to believe that, you know, the U.S. economy improves, has always improved and gotten better. Lifespans are getting longer. Generally, our people's health is better. You know, the economy may be periods of flatness, but it's always generally still improving. And people look at me like, oh, I guess so, but why don't I feel better then?
Yeah.
It's hard getting through a certain a mental state. You're right. Doomerism is a great word. I love that word.
Did you see that that poll? Like the Fed just released the economic well-being report, and I think it's 73% of Americans feel great about their own finances, but 18% feel good about the rest of America. So you know, those 3/4 of the country is like, I feel awesome, but everything around me is really, really bad. And so I think that discrepancy and that disparity leads to what you're describing too. It's just like people trend towards doomerism because they think the world around them really sucks, even if they're doing okay.
Yeah, but you're not a doomerist yourself, are you? No, of course not. No. No, you got a new book coming out. Not yet, but I'm going to give you a chance to plug it. It's called In This Economy, How Money and Markets Really Work. When is it coming out? Who's publishing it?
February 2024, and Penguin Random House is publishing it. Yeah.
And what's it like writing a book? I'll tell you about what it's like writing a book. My second book just came out, but I want to know what you think. How are you doing with it?
I remember when we were on the podcast together, Compound and Friends, you were talking about, you know, writing a book is a journey. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. And it sure is a journey. It's been really fun, but it's been really interesting, like revisiting ideas like GDP, jobs reports, like how do we sort of talk about these things? How do we apply them to 2023 and beyond? So it's taking all these, you know, academic theory ideas and applying them to the real world. So
the publishing industry, for those of you who don't know, makes absolutely no economic sense at all. I wrote a story after the book came out, said, thinking of writing a book, you might want to reconsider because it doesn't make any economic sense. You do it because you have this intense need to say something. And that has to be the overriding motivation for you. Are you good at long-term planning? I mean, a book is a series of little pieces that you have to keep executing on almost every day. Are you good at that?
I think so, yeah. It's been really fun. Each chapter is its own segment, right? So they can each be read separately. So that's been kind of nice, too. I don't have to, like, weave a story, which is nice.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I've really enjoyed chatting with you. This is her first time on.